Okay, so the new construction condo market in the city of Toronto is not in a good space right now. If you've been watching my channel for the last few years, you'll know that I've been pretty vocal in the fact that I wasn't a big fan of new construction, specifically over the last 5 years. Not because I didn't like the developers, not because I thought the projects weren't going to be good. It was just pricing. I just looked at the numbers and the values that they were putting, these future values that people were lining up to buy, sometimes were like 30-40% more expensive than buying a even 2 to 5 year old condo in the same neighborhood. And I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I just couldn't actually recommend it to my clients and sleep at night. And when those pre-con launches would happen, sometimes we talk about it with our clients, then try to say to them hey, look, this is what this costs. This is what this costs. Let's just go buy resale. There's way more value. And for a long period of time, investors made a ton of money. And what this video is, I'm not going to edit this. I'm just going to talk. And I really want you to participate in this in the comments, okay? Anything you're thinking on this, I'd love to know below. If you normally don't comment on this video. Because I did CTV last week, and I did it based on the new construction numbers. And we were talking about just what's going on. And the reality is that projects are getting canceled. Investors are not there anymore. Anyone really that bought Greater Toronto Area new construction condos between 2021 and 2022, they're closing now. And I don't know anyone that's worth what they paid. They're all worth less. There's all these things happening. They're closing on them. Well, some people are closing on them. They're renting them out. They're losing money. And then the question that I'm getting from all these people that I didn't help buy is, well, how long do we have to wait for this to be worth what we paid? And I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. And one of the things that really made me want to make this video is when I did the CTV thing last week, and I've done that a lot. I've been on there a lot over the years, and I always enjoy it. And for people that don't know, they give you a general topic, but they never tell you what questions they're going to ask. So I'm kind of just firing from the hip. I was prepared. I knew my talking points, but I didn't know what I was going to say. And one of the things I said was, we don't need any more condos right now. It's not a big deal that these projects are being canceled because we have enough, right? There's enough condos in Toronto. We have 8,000 condos for sale in the city of Toronto right now. And we are very much in a buyer's market. And we are being told right now by the actions of the buyers that we don't need more of this property type. And the reporter was like, well, you said we don't need more condos, but I thought we had a housing supply shortage. And I'm like, well, if you look over the last 15 years, we did, the inventory levels. But for the last 2 years, specifically for condos, we don't. And I'm just going to read you some of the numbers here. And this is from Urbanation for their Q2 report for new construction condos. And there was only 3 projects that launched in Q2 in 2025. 3 projects. And that's a total of 891 units. I'm not sure if any of them even sold out or any of them even got to 70% sales. There was 4 projects, 719 units that were canceled in Q2. That totals up to 20 projects canceled since 2024. 20 condo projects canceled. Now, some of them turned to purpose-built rentals. They didn't just not build, they just changed their strategy. But I bet a good percentage of these were canceled. Unsold inventory. What unsold inventory means for new construction is that these projects have launched, could have been last month, could have been 3 years ago, but they haven't hit where they need to hit, which is typically 70% sales to start getting their construction financing, put the shovel in the ground, and start building this thing. Now, a lot of this unsold inventory, which is now sitting at 24,000 units, probably never gets built because these projects will just cancel. If they don't get to where they need to get to for construction financing, they're likely just going to cancel. And then completed condo inventory. And what this means is that the building's actually done. It's registered or at least an interim occupancy. There is 2,478 units for sale right now. So if you're the type of buyer that wants to buy something brand new and not have to wait 5 years to get your product, it does exist. But even talking to people from TRREB about this is mostly the buyer for that is a downsizer that's selling their big house and just moving into a really nice luxury condo. That doesn't help the first-time home buyer or really anybody on the affordable housing side of this conversation. What also caught my attention here is that only 131 units sold in completed projects. So even though there is available inventory, not much is selling. Okay, so what does this all mean? Why did I want you to comment on this video? Because I want to try to figure out solution-wise, like, what are we going to do here? Because there's a very strong chance. I know the condo market's not good right now. I know the overall economy is not good. I get all those things. But there's a very good chance in 5 years, we find ourselves right back in the situation we were previously, where we're just selling to investors. We're just making these smaller units. Like, it could happen again if this kind of works itself out. Now, it's going to take a period of time, but it could potentially happen. There was 31,422 units that are projected, are projected to be given to people that bought them in 2025. So on top of the 8,000 active condos for sale, we have 31,000 condo units that are being given to the purchaser that bought them 2-3 years ago, likely worth less than they paid. Now, that doesn't mean 31,000 units are going up for sale, but I bet 70% of those buyers were investors, and they're going to put them on the rental market. So at least in the short to medium term, I think rental prices in the city of Toronto are going to continue to go down. And then in 2026, we have about 18,000 units being delivered. That puts us back to kind of the 10-year historical norms. And then after that, we got nothing. So we've been working in these extremes where we have the most ever this year. And then by 27, 28, 29, 2030, there's absolutely nothing. Now, I think we have enough inventory right now that even by 2027 doesn't mean the condo market goes on fire and everything's amazing again, at least from the seller side of things. I think there's still going to be enough inventory then. But then we get to 28, then we get to 29, then we get to 2030, and then we find ourselves in a really tough situation. And here's why I want your opinion, because I just want to hear from every side of this. What do we do to change this in the future? Now, the big thing is, well, investors are buying these small units that never had an end user purchaser. Because even the bachelor units that were trading hands were typically going from investor to investor to investor, and they were easy to rent out. Renting them out was never really a huge issue, but selling them was always very difficult. And you would think cheapest option means it sells the fastest. Not the truth at all. Much more expensive, bigger floor plan condos are the ones that are selling right now. The small, not very big floor plan, least expensive units are sitting on the market. But the way that it works, at least in the city of Toronto, is these developers need to get, and I believe, I don't know if it's like a law or anything, but this is just the way it's been for a long time. They usually need to get to about 70% of the buildings sold to actually get their construction financing. This is a risk thing from the banks. It makes sense, right? Why would you lend on something if you don't know they haven't sold the project? But this is where the issue lies. The system in which we are currently using to build new product, which for the last 10, 15 years has really just given us our rental inventory. Now we're finally getting purpose-built rentals coming back to the table here. But the system that we have, it's like, how many first-time home buyers or downsizers are going to buy something and want to wait 4 years to get it? Everything, trust me, everything changes in your life in 4 to 5 years, let alone the economy, interest rates, your job situation, your relationship. Like, who would want to wait that long? Especially who would want to wait that long paying that premium? So my question to you is, like, is there a way to create a new system to sell new construction product? And yes, the investors will always be involved in some capacity. But right now, it's like the only person willing to wait 4 to 5 years is the investor. That's how these projects actually get built. Whether we like it or not, that's what's been happening. Is there a way that developers will feel good enough to actually build these things where end users are the ones actually buying them? Then that forces the developer to actually create units that people like. Because it would be easy just to say, well, Tom, all developers should just cut their prices and they'd sell. Yeah, like, I guess they would sell, but can they? Based on what they paid for the land, based on the development fees from the city. I'm not an expert in that. I'm sure they could bring the profit margin down a little bit more, but then it's going to get to the point where they're like, well, we're just not going to build at this point. Or Tom, why can't they just build bigger units? Well, people have to buy the 2 beds pre-construction for them to actually be built, where the hottest product to the investor was the smaller units previously. Now, obviously, you'll say, well, all this would start selling if you cut the price. And I think it's true, but I don't think it's realistic for some of the new construction stuff. Like if they cut the price anymore, they just won't build it. And then we have another issue on our hands. And then you've got the unsold inventory in projects that are completed now, and that they could cut the price on. Because of those, what was the number that I gave you guys? 2,478 units that are currently available unsold in condos in the GTA that are registered, but just nobody lives there. The developer still owns them. They want to get the heck out of those. They want to sell those so they can move on to the next project that they're building, right? So they could bring down the prices on that, because the prices on those are still significantly higher for the most part compared to a comparable resale condo across the street. So there's my little rant on new construction. I do believe, like, I get condos are not, they're the easy thing to talk crap about in the internet right now. And most of the people, like, I see the comments, I get it. But most of the people that talk crap about condos don't live in condos, don't even live in the city of Toronto, don't understand that it's not just the size of the unit always. It's the location of the building. It's the fact that, like, there's a ton, you can walk everywhere. Your car's underground. I don't need to sell you on this, but there are a lot of perks. And for condos, they do create opportunities in the market for more than just single family homes, right? The first time home buyer is likely buying a condo, at least in the city of Toronto. Most of my clients did. The investor, obvious. The downsizer, and then the luxury market. You have 4 categories across many, many different price points, where if you want to buy a house, it's like, all right, do you have $1 million or more? Because that's what gets you into the housing market. So love to know your thoughts, what you think, like, condo market here in the city of Toronto. It's really interesting, because I know it gets clumped in with everything else. City of Toronto has more inventory for homes than it usually does, but most of the inventory, 70%, is condos. Plus what's coming. But then if we're not selling anything now, we're going to have nothing in future years. And eventually, not this year, not next year, probably not even the year after, but eventually that's going to catch up. Thanks for watching. I'd love to know what you think below. My name's Tom Storey. And remember, home is where your story begins.